Hi, my name is Joseph Grad, and I'm a practicing healthcare attorney licensed in Pennsylvania and New York. The topic for today's discussion is physician employment agreements, a topic of which I have a fair amount of experience with as I represent physicians, physician groups, and hospitals in negotiating and drafting these agreements. Where I'd like to focus today's discussion with respect to physician employment agreements is not with respect to all of the various sections and legalese, but to provide some basic wisdom that I've uncovered over my years of practicing in this area. The first thing you really need to consider are, what are the most important deal terms for you? What are the terms that you really can't live without in your physician employment agreement? If you don't know what you are seeking in your physician employment agreement, your lawyer or other representative is not going to be able to assist you in obtaining the most favorable deal terms. So think long and hard about what you are really seeking in your employment agreement. Another point I would like to make is I think that it's extremely beneficial for each physician to do an honest and thorough analysis of their market value with respect to your future employment. You don't want to undervalue your market value, because if you do, you'll leave a lot of money on the table, you'll be undercompensated, and you won't really achieve or obtain the best deal terms for your agreement. On the other hand, you don't want to overvalue your market value, because in that case you may come off as unreasonable, and some employers come to the assumption that if you are unreasonable now in your contract negotiations, you will be unreasonable once your employment begins. So be careful. It's really not going to advantage you to undervalue or overvalue your market value. Really understanding your market value will go a long way in achieving the best terms for your employment agreement. Another thing you really need to consider when offered a physician employment agreement is whether you are likely to remain in that geographic area of your employer following the termination of your employment. And it's really critical to know whether you're likely to stay or not, because there are certain provisions in the physician employment agreement, like a restrictive covenant, like the clean sweep provision, that will inhibit your ability to stay in that geographic area. So if you really think you're going to stay in that area, you need to pay careful attention to those provisions in your contract and make sure you can negotiate them to the fullest extent possible. On the other hand, if you know, once this employment is done, I'm going to leave this area, there's really no point in burning your negotiating equity trying to marginalize these deal terms, because in the end, they're really not going to apply to you. Another point I would like to make, which undoubtedly you will find incredibly self-serving, is hire a lawyer. And actually, specifically, hire a healthcare attorney. Your future and your bank account depend upon it. And I think most physicians understand the need to hire a lawyer, but I think the mistake I routinely see made is they don't hire a healthcare lawyer. And your lawyer could be the best lawyer in any given area, but if he's not a healthcare lawyer, he's not going to understand the terms, the terminology, the industry-specific jargon that is going to be able to create the best contract for you. Either your lawyer understands healthcare legalese or they don't. You need one that does. Another thing is, don't be afraid to negotiate with your employer. It's amazing to me as hospital counsel for employment agreements how often I see physician employment contracts returned and signed by the physician with no attempt by the physician to negotiate, change, or modify any of the terms. They're literally leaving money and favorable deal terms on the table and giving them to the hospital. And I think often the reason why physicians don't try to negotiate their employment contracts is that they don't want to appear unreasonable or difficult in the eyes of their future employer. I think that's a mistake. Trust me, there's an expectation by your employer that the terms of the draft employment agreement provided to you are negotiable. Now, that being said, after you propose various terms and your employers come back with various terms and you've gone back, there's a point where You understand what the deal is, or understand what the offer is, and it's time to either accept the offer or move on. My last piece of advice I would like to give you is don't become hyper-focused on your base salary. Your base salary is just one part of your compensation, and your compensation is, albeit a significant part, but is just part of the overall employment opportunity. When reviewing base salary, you need to also look at the incentive compensation section as well in your agreement and merge those two together to understand whether the overall compensation, including a signing bonus, are reasonable. Now, what I mean by hyper-focused is that your sole decision about what physician group or hospital you're going to join is based on who provides you with the most money. And I think overall, that's a bad approach. I understand that compensation is very important. If you're a new physician, you've busted your hump for many years to get to this point where you can finally make some real money. But my point is don't auction yourself off to the highest bidder. One of the things I routinely see is that the employers that offer the most money are the employers that have to offer the most money in order to entice recruits to join that physician group or hospital. Well, that concludes my discussion on providing some general advice on physician employment agreements. If you think that I can help you in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out to me by phone at 570-963-8880, or you can shoot me an email at jwg@josephgradlaw.com. And if I don't hear from you, hopefully you've gained some wisdom from this video and you get the best possible deal with your employer. Good luck.